Hello, my name is Ben Smith, and I'm the director here at Camp David and YWAM Crosswind, and I'm very excited to have you here and to be talking about grief and helping children grieve. One of the things that I think is really important when we learn something new is that we're constantly asking ourselves, what's the truth and what lies do I need to throw out? What truth do I need to embrace? When Jesus was doing his ministry, he often used the word repent, which means to change your thinking. And so we want to think about, in regards to grief, what things do we have to change in our thinking, that either assumptions that we've had or just our upbringing as we go through life and experience grief. Grief is a very common experience. You know, every person alive, if you made it past birth, and maybe even before birth, you're going to experience grief. And so we're going to be talking about that today. So when I refer to grief, first of all, I want to just give a biblical perspective. You know, Jesus said, "Blessed are those who mourn, because they'll be comforted." And in that statement, Jesus is saying there's a blessing at mourning, which means that grief is good. It's important. It's valuable. And so with that, I'd like to ask some other questions. Do I embrace grief or do I avoid it? Do I share my grief with others, or is that something we just don't talk about? Because all that gives us a picture about how we see grief. Children experience grief in a lot of different ways. They experience grief, of course, in the death of a loved one, the death of a grandparent. But they also experience grief in a move, where they're moving to an entirely new community, and now they have to make new friends. Now they have to, it's a new house. All the old memories and what's familiar is gone, and they're in a new place. And so children experience grief that way. Children experience grief, of course, when a pet dies. We actually had one of our daughters who her doll, when she's a little girl, her doll was left outside, and the dog ate her doll up, chewed it all up. And it was a very, very sad thing for her, because it was the first doll that she really attached to. It was her Deborah doll. And so we had a box, and we had a funeral for Deborah, because she really meant a lot to Bethany. And one of the things you have to remember is grief. We all experience grief differently, but it also, what we value, what's important to us, it shifts as we get older. But remembering that for a child, things can be really significant to them that seem, not so important to us. So I'd like to tell the story of a girl whose parents were in the kitchen talking, and they were talking about maybe getting a safe for their home, because there had been a string of burglaries in the neighborhood, and they were worried about some of their valuables in their home getting stolen. And the little girl was playing in the living room, and she piped up and she said, "Hey, Daddy, do burglars steal dolls?" And he kind of condescendingly said, "No, honey, burglars don't steal dolls." And she smiled and said, "Oh, thank you, Daddy." And off she went to play. Because for her, that was the most valuable thing she had. But if burglars don't steal dolls, then life's okay. So, children, they experience grief differently. But grief is an essential part of life. Grief is what, when it's done well, it's what enables us to still live life well. If a young man grew up without a father, but he was able to grieve not having a father well, he's going to be able to be a good father. If he grew up and he didn't have a father, and he said, "Well, who cares? It doesn't matter. Who needs a dad? I'm doing fine on my own." And that was his approach. When he becomes a father, he's going to have a very hard time filling that role, because it's not valuable to him. But if he was able to grieve that, then he's going to say, if he's able to grieve it to the point of, "I wish I had a dad who could teach me how to go fishing," or, "I wish I had a dad that would just read me books," or just articulating the things that he missed. When he becomes a father, he's going to read the books. He's going to take his son fishing. Even if he doesn't know how to go fishing, he's going to figure it out so he can take his son fishing, because he's been able to grieve that loss. And so grief is really important in that way. Another reality with grief, often people think of grief as very dark and cold. And the reality is, when we avoid grief, when we don't allow ourselves to go through the process of grieving losses, that's what's cold and dark. But when we press into grief, we actually find it's very warm, it's very comforting. For those of you who like chocolate, I like to refer to grief as something like dark chocolate. There's a sadness to it, and yet there's a warmth, and it's mingled with love. Grief is also an aspect of love. If we love, and we love well, we will experience grief. And when we grieve, we give value to that good thing that was lost. So when I grieve the death of my grandma, I give value to her life. And so grief is very important. And helping children grieve is essential for them to thrive. A lot of the key moments in young people's lives is a time of loss. And so we're going to be talking about that in our next video. But I want you to pause at the end of this video now, and I want you to think about what are some losses that I experienced as a child growing up. And I want you to think about that, because we're gonna come back to grief some more, and I want you to be able to process with your own story that grief, and I'll explain that in the next video. Thank you.